Yo, Disney Dudettes! Now that I have gone ahead and read the Silmarillion at the time that this review was written, they might be slightly out of order in recording. Anyway, I decided I was going to go ahead and review an oldie but a goodie, something I really liked from before when I had this channel, which was Ready Player One. Now, since I have written this review, I have since seen the movie, and I can confirm that much like any book ever with a movie adaptation, the book was much better. So let's go ahead and review that thing. It's worth mentioning that the audiobook version of this is available on audible.com, which I am not sponsored by, I'm just saying that that's where I happen to get my audiobooks, is read by Wil Wheaton, which I geeked out a little bit over because I don't really know that much about him, but I know the name Wil Wheaton from Star Trek and I know him from Critical Role, so it made me smile. I know that it has absolutely nothing to the story, but it made me happy. There's a lot I get angry about on this show, so I want to talk about something that made me happy. That's the new show, things that make me happy. So the basic premise of this book is that a super duper rich billionaire dies, and it says that the first person to find a series of Easter eggs he's left behind in a virtual reality game gets to control all his fortune and the game itself. So the internet, of course, goes nuts and tears apart the video that he left behind explaining all of this, meticulously moving frame by frame by frame by frame by frame by frame. And I actually like it because it is a very accurate description of the way the internet currently tears apart trailers and basically anything that captures their interest. So I feel like this would actually be something that would happen in real life if something like this did happen, where a super duper rich billionaire died and left control of the person who could ever solve his riddle. So I actually like this detail because it seems very, very accurate. It seems like it's written, at least it seems to be written, with an appreciation for internet and geek culture, which I really like. So this is actually something that I forgot about, but early on in the story, and it's not related to the rest of the story in any way, there's a very, very long anti-God and really just anti-life speech. And like, it goes on for a while. I don't know, it just like, if that was a philosophical standpoint he meant to put in, then that would seem to be what the rest of the book was about. Instead, it just seems like somebody that has an issue with God or the church or something and wanted to put that out in his book. So in that case, dude, shame on you. And I say this as somebody that writes Christian fiction. If you're gonna put that in, make that the point of what you're trying to say. Don't just throw it in there because you're pissy. So, the whole idea of this story revolves around the virtual reality world created by said rich billionaire called The Oasis, which has every song ever made, every movie ever made, every book ever written, access to every form of media ever created. That's a really cool idea. Unfortunately, that will never happen. It won't. It's not going to be a thing. The legal ramifications and costs of that alone are insane. I mean, imagine somebody just trying to get the rights to use all of Disney stuff in any way they wanted, because that is the premise of this. It's like a virtual reality world where you can create anything. Disney would not let that go for less than several $1 billion alone. So a lot of the Oasis revolves around the creator's fascination with things made in the 80s, which is kind of alright because on one hand it does explain stuff that you might not necessarily get, but on the other hand, unless you were actually born or raised in the 80s, it's not going to resonate with you in the same way. It doesn't with me. The only part that actually really resonated with me, where I geeked out over a little bit, as far as the book not necessarily being read by Wil Wheaton, was the fact where they go into talking about a D&D module, and that's only because I played that a lot in high school and am playing it now. So our protagonist finds the first Easter egg, and an evil corporation that's looking to control the company and all the money associated with it blows up his house. I only mention it because his aunt was in there, and actually somebody else that he liked. His aunt and he had a very strained relationship, but there was somebody that he liked in the explosion, and a lot of other people died because it's essentially an entire apartment complex that just gets blown the fuck up, and we just kind of move right on from it. It's not really discussed or thought about at all. And it kind of never comes up again, except for the fact that his life was in danger. I mean, I get that being raised in a dystopian future could potentially make you somewhat more desensitized to the idea of death, but it's a pretty fucking big gap. So the story continues on through a bunch of other obscure 80s references, some of the more persistent ones, such as Pac-Man, obviously, I understand, but there's other things like The Adventures of Zork, which I don't know what that is. And sure, if you want, you can go do the research. I'm sure Wikipedia could regale you for hours on what The Adventures of Zork are, but it doesn't hold the same feeling for me because I don't have a nostalgic memorabilia like essence of having played The Adventures of Zork as a kid. If you grew up in the 80s, or if you were somebody that did grow up playing these, then I can see how it would resonate with you, but it feels like a very, very niche market this author is trying to hit, and unfortunately, I'm not part of it. So the story continues, our hero eventually wins the contest, gets the girl of his dreams, and yada yada yada, stuff moves on. Ultimately, I did enjoy the book, but I think that's largely just because I'm a video game nerd and it appealed to that part of me, because it seems like a really cool idea. Like, I would definitely be playing the Oasis if it were a thing. But ultimately, it's trying at once to either go too broad or too narrow. If you're gonna go for a niche market, going after something like a specific game or a specific culture, even just more generalized like sci-fi instead of trying to sacralize all 80s culture, would be better. So something like Critical Failure is another book I'll be reviewing. That focuses on a specific game model, so it appeals to the wide range of people that play that game. However, this guy's trying at once to tackle something with too broad and also not broad enough of a spoon, because you either have to try to appeal to everybody or go after a specific market. This guy's trying to eat his cake and have it too, which just doesn't really work. But anyway, that's all for me, so let's go ahead and take a look at that bingo card. And we did actually hit bingo twice, which is kind of interesting. My personal score for the book is 6.5 out of 10. Above average. It wasn't fantastic, but it was pretty good. Overall, I definitely enjoyed it. Definitely enjoyed reading it. And I was happy that it inspired a movie. I don't necessarily know that I liked the movie because the movie changed a bunch of shit, as they always do. But that's all for now. So, if you have something else that you want me to read and review, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Let me know. Until next time, drink plenty of water, tell your parents that you love them, and to stroke your mustache at night.